Okay, so we're back with part two of segment one. We had a battery problem, so we'll ask that last question again, just because we don't know how much it was recorded or not. But what was it like growing up in the Depression?
I don't remember a whole lot about it because we always had food. And, that would be a big thing. But we lived on a farm and Mom canned a lot and we had beef, because of the cattle. Until they took our cattle.
Who's they?
The bank came and took our cattle because Dad didn't get the money paid for some loan that he had borrowed on it. And then we only had one little calf left, and it grew up to be our milk cow. But we lived on one side of Vale and then the other because we moved every 2 years because I suppose Dad thought that he could make a better crop on one land than he did the other. But he would lease for 2 years. And one place he leased a lot of land that was owned by the school. They called it school section. And that's where we grew beets. But before we were able to grow the beets, it was so dry that there was hardly anybody able to grow anything. It was just dry.
So was beets his primary crop, or?
It was from about the time I was 12, probably, until I left home. It was a primary crop for a lot of people around there. It was sugar beets. And we had a sugar factory in Belle Fourche, which was about 28 miles away. And they would grow the beets, and it was a big job because we had to go work in the fields, and we had to, when the beets got up a little bit, we'd have to thin them and just leave a certain beet every 6 inches so that they had room to grow. And then we had to weed them in between, hoe the weeds. And I used to get so upset with my brother because there were 3 of the older kids and 3 of the younger ones, and they would, what they called, block the beets, and we would thin them. And we would come along behind and thin the beets. And this middle brother of mine loved cars, and we had what they called a drainage ditch. Mm-hmm. Right along the highway, so every time he heard a car coming, he'd go run up on the drainage ditch to see what kind it was. And he always knew what they were. But anyway, then after they got bigger, then they had a machine to lift the beets up, and then we had to take a hold of a beet and chop the green part off and throw it in a piles. We threw it in piles, and then somebody would come along and put the piles in a truck and take them to the sugar factory. So
Did having to work with beets, do you like beets today, or?
Well, I like the sugar. That's what we got from those beets.
That's what you're harvesting there. You and I have talked about this a few times about if there was a depression today and you're concerned for my generation and the generations behind me, how they would survive and react to that. So what words of advice would you give for me and my cousins that are younger than me and their children?
Well, all I can say is they should use food and water sparingly and save what you can because it's coming. The water is running out a lot of places. And that's one big thing. You need water. And learn, for the girls to learn to can foods, to preserve them. And I know we have freezers that we can freeze foods, but you might have the electricity turned off, so better be more careful with your foods. I don't think it would be as hard for people my age to go through a depression again, because we were used to using an outside toilet and not having electricity and no phone. And we didn't have electricity until I was 17. And we never had a phone while I was home. So those things are things you can do without.
How did you catch Pokemon if you didn't have a phone?
Never heard of it.
So-
I don't know how they catch it now. I'm not understanding Pokemon.
Well, that's more power to you. So your concern is more, is it more of just the physical strength and ability to endure difficult things, or is it more of a mental or what do you think?
I don't know. I don't think economically I could advise anybody, because some people will have jobs and some won't. But and I'm sure that it would be very stressful for a lot of young people when they couldn't run down to the store and buy a meal that they want. Just have to learn to do some cooking and caring for your own place.
Very good. We'll ask one more question, and then we'll wrap this up. What was it like growing up during? What was a typical day at your home like as a child?
Well, as a child, we'd get up pretty early, like 6 o'clock, and sometimes we had to milk the cows. Sometimes my brothers were there to do it, but not always. And then we had to make our beds before we went to school and help Mom with breakfast. And then we had to do the dishes and get ready for school and catch the school bus about 7:30.
So all that before 7:30.
Yep.
And what time did you usually go to bed at night? And were there any nighttime chores?
Yeah, we had the same kind of chores at night. We had to milk the cow and separate it and wash the separator, which was a job, I think, that was the worst job I had, because part of the separator, when you washed it, had a cylinder that had a whole bunch of discs in it, and you put them on a great big, looked like a safety pin, great big one, and they had holes in them, so you put them on there and then wash them separately, and it just made the water like snot. It was just terrible. I hated doing that job. But then we had to do the dishes, and my sister and I used to take turn washing and drying, and that wasn't easy, because we had to heat the water on the stove. On the one big cook stove, we had a water reservoir on one side that would usually be pretty warm, but otherwise we'd have to heat it. And then we used a dish pan, just a big round dish pan.
Leah,
We didn't have a sink.
Leah, please.
We didn't have a sink, so we used a dish pan and then another big pan to dry them in, or to drain them, and then one of us washed and one dried. And every time it was my turn to wash, it seemed like my sister would run around and bring out cinnamon roll pans from under a cupboard or something that she had put there the day before.
But she didn't want to wash.
Yeah. I might
Which
have
sister
done
is
it
that?
once in a while too, I don't know, but I sure remember her doing that a lot.
Well, just for the real quick to end this up, how many brothers and sisters do you have, and what were their names, and where did you fall in rank there?
My older brother was Vernon, and he was born in 1916. My sister was Cora, and she was born in 17, about a year and a half later. And then I had a brother, Elwood, Bob. He was born in 19, I believe. Lyle was born in 21, and I was born in 23. But in between Elwood and Lyle, I had another brother that died.
You were born in 24.
And yeah, and I was born in 24. And then my younger sister, Irma, well, let's see, that brother's name was Lyle. And then I have a sister named Irma who was a year and a half, 15 months younger than me. And then we had another brother born after her that died. So that was 8 children, but 6 living.
Gotcha. Well, very good. Thank you, Grandma. We'll do this again next week, and hopefully we'll find out how the sound is on this and make adjustments so that it gets better week by week. But if you have any questions, again, email them to Mark, MARQUE, at howinsurance.org, or you can send them to me on Facebook, or you can text them to me at 801-358-6359. Thank you very much. Thank you, Grandma.
You're welcome.
Want to play some cribbage?
Sure.
Okay.